the big story this week, of course, has been Roy Moore running for Senate in Alabama. There's now at least 7 women who have come out and told stories ranging about him from, to be fair, decades ago, ranging from an attempted assault to just inappropriate sexual behavior. But the sort of fine point on this, of course, is that these women were all in their teens. So one was 14, others 16, 17. A woman told a story this week of getting a phone call while she's in high school, being brought down to the principal's office, getting on the phone, saying hello, and on the other line was Roy Moore, the DA. He asks, "What are you doing?" She says, "I'm in the middle of trigonometry class." I mean, these are stunning charges, and yet we have seen sort of a mix of reaction across the sort of right-wing spectrum. I don't know how much of it is sincere, but just give me your broad strokes on this.
Well, first of all, just let me say absolutely that, I think this guy obviously is he's committed assault on underage minors. There's just too much evidence. These women seem completely credible to me. They are not political people. Some of them are Republicans who voted for Donald Trump, which says something. And these are not there's nothing about this that appears to be some kind of a setup in any way. This was just reporting that came through. People went down there, started talking. Obviously, once they started digging into it, it bubbled up to the surface. And Roy Moore has been a fixture in Alabama politics for 40 years. And, he very clearly said, at least to one of the women, made a very explicit threat. I'm the law and you're a child. No one will believe you. And I'm sure that is exactly what kept all these women quiet. If I'd have been in their position, I wouldn't have said anything either. This guy was a very powerful man in that town. Later, a very powerful man in Alabama. He was the Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court twice. And he was considered a religious icon. He was an avatar of, conservative Christian morals. I mean, who would come out and do this? And I think probably at any other time it would have been, they knew that that the women knew that their lives would be ruined. And this is the only point, and not just maybe, absolutely, because of the whole atmosphere of women coming forward and the fact that this was a big national race and that there was maybe some protection in that it would get a lot of publicity and therefore would protect some of these women, that they felt comfortable saying what had happened to them. So having said all that and absolutely believing that this happened, and let me just say one more thing. I mean, I was, I was a teenager in the 1970s myself. And let me tell you something. It was a permissive time.
Right.
But the fact that the people at the mall all said, "Watch out for this guy," and I mean, to me, that tells you everything. If there was anything even mildly appropriate about it, the late 1970s would have been a period where people would have shrugged, and they didn't. They went, ugh, there was something really gross about the way he was behaving. People saw it. They were wanting to protect girls from it. So, that's another factor in there that I absolutely believe was true, that
contemporaneous,
there was something really gross about, yeah.
There was a contemporaneous, almost like quasi-institutional alarm bells went off. I mean,
exactly.
I don't want to call the mall an institution, but it's not like, this is a community that's recognizing there's a problem with this guy. And
exactly. And it's a community where a lot of teenagers hang out, and that they were, at that time, I think the mall was probably the only place that teens could go to, kind of hang on a Friday night or whatever. And there were a lot of teenagers working in the stores around there. The fact that these store owners and various, security guards and people like that were aware of him and were actually warning people, that says a lot. And knowing, too, that he was remember, I mean, he was the assistant district attorney at the time. This guy isn't just some dude. I mean, he's the law, and he was doing this stuff. So, having said all that, I also have to mention the fact that, this is happening on a political level in a very, very interesting way, because everybody will remember that Judge Roy Moore was endorsed by Steve Bannon, the man who is threatening to blow up the world and who is very explicitly going after the Republican establishment.
Right.
And Roy Moore was opposed strongly by Mitch McConnell and the Republican establishment in Washington, who even got Donald Trump to reluctantly endorse Moore's rival
Luther
in the
Strange,
primary.
Right.
Luther Strange. So that political overlay, I mean, those Democrats are really kind of out of it in this, other than that they have a pretty good candidate there who, if this whole thing unfolds the way it should, he might actually take the seat, which would be shocking. But for a Democrat to do it, but he's not bad. I mean, he prosecuted the KKK. I mean, he's for an Alabama Democrat. I'm not sure you can do much better than that, or at least a white Alabama Democrat. So, this political story is kind of a microcosm of what's happening in the Republican Party in general. I mean, this is part of their, I don't even know, it's chaos, really. And so you've got Bannon and, of course, Trump, who really did like Moore. He got sort of talked into endorsing his rival against his will. I think it was a deal he made with McConnell. Well, okay, I'll do it. And he clearly said in his big rally for Luther Strange, he said out loud, maybe I made a mistake, and went and the next day deleted all of his tweets on his Twitter feed that had endorsed Strange and came out strongly for Roy Moore. So, and then of course you have this the next level of this, which is that Donald Trump himself was accused by 20 women of assault and harassment, and yet won and bragged on tape about it, and just won his election a year ago, which is something that has everybody thinking, just can Moore get away with it? What's Trump going to say about it? And notably, he said nothing about it. He's, at least up to a certain point during the week, he went 12 days at a minimum.
And literally, I mean, he had a press conference that he ran away from. But look, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the implications of Roy Moore relative to the tax vote. We also got to talk about, at the very least, maybe not necessarily in the context of Roy Moore, but also accusations against Senator Al Franken that came out this week, and broadly speaking, why we're seeing this in society in a way that we haven't seen. It's not like this type of sexual harassment just started against women. So we'll talk about all those things when we get back. I'm Sam Seder. I'm talking to the great Heather Parton. We'll be right back. Ring of Fire Radio.